In the vast, unyielding void of prehistory, where the stars themselves were young and untamed, the galaxies stir with the faint echoes of creation's first whispers. A shroud of cosmic dust hung heavy, dimming the light of nascent suns, as if the universe itself slumbered in anticipation of the strife to come. Here, amid the primordial silence, we begin our contemplation of the space marines, not as the thunderous legions of later ages, but as seed sown in the fertile soil of humanity's ancient dreams, fragile yet destined for unyielding might. And in this quiet genesis, shadows linger, hinting at the engineer horrors that would one day clad warriors in armor forged from forbidden stars. The context of this era unfolds like a slow unraveling of nebulae, where time stretches into infinities that dwarf the fleeting pulse of mortal hearts. Imagine Terra, that cradle world, not yet the scarred bastion of the Imperium, but a blue-green jewel adrift in the Sol system's gentle cradle. Billions of years prior, life had clawed its way from oceanic depths, evolving through epochs of trial and triumph, each cycle of meditation on endurance. The primordial seas churn with the relentless rhythm of tides, pulling and releasing in an eternal cadence that mirrored the breath of the cosmos itself. Single-celled organisms, those infinitesimal architects of existence, divided and mutated in the warm shallows, their forms simple yet profound, carry within them the encoded potential for all that would follow. Over eons uncounted, these microscopic pilgrims assembled into multicellular symphonies, jellyfish pulsing like living lanterns in abyssal currents, trilobites scuttling across sedimented floors with armored grace, their exoskeletons a faint prelude to the ceramite shells of ages yet unborn. The air, when it finally deigned to form, was a thin veil of possibility, laced with the metallic tang of volcanic outgassings, inviting the first tentative breaths of photosynthetic pioneers. Forests would later rise, vast and ancient, their canopies a whispering archive of wind-sculpted leaves, each rustle of verse and grand poem of persistence. Rivers carved their patient paths through stone, eroding mountains into silt that fertilized the plains, a slow alchemy turning violence into nurture. In these vast stretches of geological reverie, one cannot help but feel the soothing weight of human insignificance. Our kind, when we emerge, mere latecomers to a drama scripted by forces indifferent to our cries, our joys reduce to ephemeral sparks against eternal night. Yet it is this very humility that lulls the mind, inviting a gentle drift into contemplation, where the galaxy scale becomes a cradle rather than a cage, rocking the soul toward dreams of what might be forged from such humble dust. As the eons layered upon one another, like strata in a geologist's reverie, the first stirrings of advanced cognition emerged from the haze of instinct. Hominids, with brows furrowed in perpetual wonder, fashioned tools from flint and bone, their hands trembling with the weight of innovation that would echo through the stars. These early wanderers roamed the savannas of Proto-Africa, their shadows long under a sun that burned with youthful fury, each step in negotiation with the land's unforgiving pulse. Fire was their first true sacrament, tamed and flickering hearts that warded off the night's predatory chorus, its crackle a rhythmic heartbeat, sinking with a drum of blood in veins unscarred by war's mechanized thunder. Language blossomed haltingly, guttural syllables evolving into tales spun around those communal flames. Stories of hunts triumphant and spirits unseen, binding clans and threads of shared myth. Societies coalesced not in haste, but in the languid flow of necessity, tribes forming around a reliable bounty of river valleys, where fish leaped silver from waters and berries hung heavy on thorn-guarded vines. The wheel's invention came later, a circular revelation that turned migration into settlement, carts groaning under loads of grain as humanity bent the earth to its will. Agriculture was no conquest but a communion, seeds pressed into soil with reverent hands, coaxing maize and millet from the ground in golden waves that swayed like cosmic waves frozen in terrestrial form. Cities sprouted tentatively, mud brick hovels clustering into ziggurats that pierced dawn's rosy veil, Their steps a stairway to the divine, though the gods they honor were but shadows of the warp's distant murmurs. Trade route unfurled like neural pathways, caravans laden with lapis lazuli and obsidian traversing deserts under starlit guidance, exchanging not just goods but ideas. Metallurgy sparked jumping from forge to forge, pottery's curves echoing the galaxy's spiral arms. Yet this ascent was punctuated by meditations on fragility. Ice ages gripped the world in crystalline fists, forcing migrations across land bridges, now submerged. Herds of mammoths thundering across tundras that would one day yield to Hive Spire's adamantium roots. Plague swept through camps like unseen reapers, culling the weak and tempering the strong. Their passage a somber reminder of entropy's gentle insistence. In these interludes of cosmic repose, time's vastness envelopes the observer like a warm fog, each epoch a breath drawn in the universe's lungs, human endeavors but faint exhalations lost to the wind. Hidden knowledge slumbers in the soil here, etched into cave walls with ochre pigments. Stick figure hunts that prefigure tactical hololiths, fertility idols whose curves hint at gene templates yet to be dreamed. Noble sacrifice takes root in ritual burials, bodies laid with grave goods for journeys unknown, a quiet defiance against the void's claim. And beneath it all, cosmic horror stirs faintly. In the shaman's trance where visions of tentacled voids flicker at dream's edge, banished by chants that sync with the night's hypnotic hush. Hope persists, a stubborn root cracking stone, whispering that from such primordial clay, titans may yet rise. Into this tapestry of slow-blooming sentience steps the Emperor, though not yet named as such, a perpetual wanderer cloaked in the anonymity of ages. His arrival a subtle inflection in history's curve. Born in the shadow of Anatolia's ancient spires, around the fires of 8000 BC, he was no ordinary child but a vessel for collective psychic will humanity's shamans, their souls converging in a ritual of desperate unity against the encroaching warp. In a cavern deep beneath the Taurus Mountains, where stalactites wept mineral tears into sacred pools, these seers, gaunt figures adorned in bone fetishes and ochre runes, gathered under a sky bruised by gathering storms. The warp's tendrils have begun to probe, demonic whispers twisting dreams into nightmares of flayed flesh and endless falls, threatening to unravel the fragile web of nascent psyker bloodlines. With chants that drone like a hum of distant hives, they immolated their essences, psychic fires consuming mortal coils and ecstatic pyres, their life forces streaming into the womb of a chosen vessel. The child emerged not with a cry but a sigh, his eyes twin abysses reflecting the galaxy's turmoil, already ancient with borrowed wisdoms. From cradle to shadow maturity, he traversed the cradle world's fractious tribes, a ghost in the machine of history, guiding without revelation, his interventions as subtle as the tide's caress on shorelines worn smooth by uncounted waves. Whispers followed him to the Euphrates' reed-fringed bends, miracles of harvest in barren fields where his touch coaxed grain from cracked earth, plagues turned aside by his mere presence, fevers breaking like dawn over fevered brows. Yet he remained a silhouette against the campfire's glow, his form unremarkable save for an aura that calmed beasts and steadied trembling hands. As civilizations waxed and waned around him, the Sumerians etching cuneiform hymns to forgotten stars on clay tablets baked in sun-scorched kilns, their city-states rising like fungal blooms amid irrigated plains. He accumulated wisdom like a black hole devours light, inexorable and unseen, his mind a repository of arcane lore that spanned the periodic table's secrets to the warp's seductive geometry. In quiet vigils atop wind-swept plateaus, where eagles wheeled in thermal spirals, he pondered the Imperium's roiling undercurrents, those demonic tendrils probing the edges of sanity with promises of power lacing lies. His vision stretched outward, beholding futures veiled in blood and starfire. Legions clad in ceramite thunder across void bridges. Suns forged his image to reclaim a fractured galaxy from Xeno's talons and Chaos's maw. This introduction serves as our anchor in primordial flow, the eternal Father whose shadow lengthens across time's vast canvas, his noble sacrifice already etched in the marrow of his being. Immortality purchased at the cost of endless isolation, a god walking among ants, his heart a vault sealed against the warmth of kin. Human insignificance finds poignant echo in his solitude, a perpetual adrift in epics where empires flicker like fireflies, yet hope gleams in his gaze, a persistent light threading the dark weave of what is to come. The progression of these primordial threads weaves a narrative of quiet accumulation, where humanity's ascent mirrors the slow coalescence of galaxies from gaseous haze, each advancement a verse in the epic of survival against the indifferent stars. Technological leaps came in hypnotic waves, measured not in decades, but in the patient turn of centuries. The Bronze Age's forges belching smoke that mingled with sacrificial incense, birthing tools of war and wonder from copper veins mined in Anatolian hills, hammers ringing like primordial bolters in rhythmic cadence. Empires bloomed across the Fertile Crescent, their borders expanding like nebulae birthing stellar nurseries. The Hittites' chariots thundering across dust-choked plains, their wheels a rhythmic drumbeat syncing with heartbeats of fear and ambition, bronze spear tips glinting under Mesopotamian suns. Trade routes snake like veins of the body of the known world, carrying spices from Indus valleys and silks from Proto-Chinese looms, ideas and plagues flowing in equal measure, binding disparate peoples in a web of interdependence that prefigured the Imperium's tied chains. Yet beneath this veneer of burgeoning order, cosmic horror stirred in subtle fissures. Warp storms flickered at the edges of perception, not yet the cataclysms of old night, but eldritch visions haunting shamans' dreams. Tentacle forms slithering through mind veils, birthing mutations and bloodlines that twisted limbs into parodic echoes of transhuman promise. The Emperor, ever the observer veiled in mortal guise, intervened sparingly, his hand guiding without grasp. A philosopher king advising Solon's Athens and marble agora where olive branches swayed in Aegean breezes, his words planting seeds of democracy that would one day fuel the democratic illusions in void-born hives, tempered by the iron of autarky. In the axial age, as Zoroaster gazed into Persian flames and Buddha sought enlightenment under the Bodhi tree's starlit canopy, he walked among them as a nameless mendicant, his presence a subtle current altering the flow of rivers of thought, steering souls from superstition snares toward empirical fires that would ignite stellar engines. Science stirred, too, with Archimedes' levers defying gravity's pull in Syracusan workshops, a meditation on human ingenuity against the universe's indifferent mass, his baths steaming with revelations of buoyancy that whispered of Voidcraft's eventual grace. But darkness gathered incrementally, the warp's influence seeping into bloodlines like ink and water, birthing psychers whose uncontrolled powers rent reality's fabric in small tears, villages consumed by spontaneous pyres, temporal eddies aging elders to dust in moonlit glades, inviting greater unravelings that would one day birth the black ships. Humanity spread its tentative tendrils to Luna's barren face in early probes, crude vessels arcing to the void on chemical plumes, their suited forms gleaming like beetle carapaces under harsh regolith glare. But these were mere preludes, echoes of the stellar diaspora come, footsteps on a path paved with forgotten bones. The Emperor's gene labs, hidden in subterranean vaults beneath Himalayan fastnesses, where yak herds graze eternal slopes, hummed with nascent experiments. Proto-Astartes serums tested on unwitting subjects conscripted from warring clans, bodies suspended in amniotic vats where alchemical fires dance in bioluminescent hues. Each trial was a somber requiem, flesh bloating with Biscopian hypertrophy, bones hardening to ferrocrete density under osmodulous kiss, only to rebel in rejection's pyretic embrace, subjects convulsing in racks as organs liquefied in futile transcendence. Failures were consigned to earth in unmarked rites, their essences recycled in nutrient cyclers, fueling the relentless pursuit of perfection, a noble sacrifice mirrored in the Emperor's own veiled toll, his hands calloused not by labor, but by the weight of futures glimpsed and guarded. Time's vastness here is palpable, a hypnotic lullaby where progress inches forward like glacial creep, each step a verse etched in the annals of endurance. Human forms but motes adrift in the cosmic river, their strivings a faint counterpoint to the galaxy's silent symphony. Hidden knowledge accrues in marginalia. Clay tablets inscribed with helical diagrams that prefigure gene seed spirals. Cave frescoes depicting armored giants storming starry foes. Revelations teased from the ether, like stars emerging from nebula's womb. Cosmic horror lurks in periphery. Demonic flickers possessing steppe witches whose eyes wept warp tears. Their covens purge in ritual fires that lit Anatolian nights with accusatory glow. Yet hope persists through these shadowed valleys, a fragile ember guarded in the emperor's breast, whispering of legions that will stand unbowed, their thunder a balm against the void's encroaching chill. At the heart of this era's climax stands the Anatolian convergence, a psychic maelstrom where the emperor fully awakens his godlike potential, the fulcrum upon which primordial threads pivot toward transhuman dawn. Circa 30,000 BCE, as ice sheets grip the north in crystalline embrace, their grinding advance a terrestrial echo of planetary collisions in distant voids. Tribal shamans convene in a cavern lit by bioluminescent fungi that pulse like captive stars, their chants a droning harmony against the warp's rising cacophony. The air thickened with the scent of smoldering herbs and sweat-slicked fear, stalagmites rising like accusatory fingers toward a vaulted ceiling veined with quartz that caught lumen glows in prismatic refractions. Demonic incursions clawed at the veil with increasing fervor. Ethereal forms slithering through rifts like oil on water, possessing flesh in orgies of mutation. Warriors twisting into gibbering beasts with elongated limbs and eyes like shattered mirrors. Their roars a discordant counterpoint to the ritual's measured rhythm. The emperor, then a youth of ethereal beauty with skin like polished marble and hair the color of midnight sands, stepped into the circle at the cavern's heart, his aura a radiant bulwark that dimmed the fungi's light and steadied trembling hands. Energies surged as the shamans deepened their trance, voices layering into a polyphonic wave that resonated with the earth's own seismic hum. Warp lightning arcing like synaptic fires across the chamber's walls, illuminating runes carved in haste with bone styluses. Souls immolated themselves in sequence. First the eldest seer whose form ignited an azure flame, his essence streaming as a luminous thread into the emperor's form, followed by kin whose cries harmonized into ecstatic dissolution, bodies convulsing in rictus grins as sci-fires consumed sinew and bone, leaving husks that crumbled to ash on the cavern floor. The emperor absorbed it all, his frame arching in silent agony, veins glowing with captured starfire. The air thrummed with residual power that raised hairs on spectral arms and set quartz veins humming in sympathetic vibration. Demons manifested fully now, claw-tipped shadows coalescing from rift maws, their forms a blasphemous fusion of insectal chitin and humanoid despair, gibbering in tongues that twisted sanity's threads. He met them not with blade but with psychic lashes flaying immaterial flesh in coruscating bursts, banishing horrors to the Imperium's depths with roars that shook bulkheads of living stone and cracked stalactites into crystalline rain. The convergence peaked as the last shaman yielded her spark. The emperor emerging transformed, eyes blazing with the aggregated might of 1,000 psycholives, his mind expanding to encompass futures branching like delta rivers into stellar seas. The cavern lay at charnel pyres spent husks, air heavy with ozone and the faint, acrid perfume of transcendence, reality stitching itself anew around him like a wound cauterized by divine fire. In the aftermath's hush, he gazed upon the stars through cavern vents, their cold light a promise of conquest unyielding, his mind already sketching the gene templates that would sire his sons, organs like Lehrman cells clotting wounds in instants, Biscopia swelling thews to godlike prowess. This moment, pregnant with cosmic weight, marks the birth of the master of mankind, his form a nexus of human potential unbound, a climax that pulses with the raw essence of creation's forge. Where sacrifice bursts not loss but elevation, the galaxy's indifference challenged by will forge in soul fire. Human insignificance dissolves in this apotheosis. The Emperor bridge spanning the chasm between moat and monolith, his solitude a noble pyre illuminating paths unseen. From this forge of souls springs a transition to greater designs. The Emperor retreating into shadowed eons of preparation, his labs delving deeper into Himalayan gloom, where yak bells tinkle distantly like forgotten vox chimes. Terra slumbers on, unaware of the god walking its surface in pilgrim's rags. As the galaxy hurtles toward fragmentation's maw, warp storms brewing on horizons veiled by time's merciful blur. Yet in this quiet interlude between convergence and crusade, hope persists, a fragile ember against the void's chill, flickering in the gene sparks of experiments that whisper of warriors yet unborn, their armor a bulwark against horrors glimpsed in cavern depths. The rhythm of existence continues, tides ebbing and flowing, stars wheeling in their ancient dance, inviting the weary mind to drift upon these cosmic currents, where the seeds of space marines take root in silence, destined to bloom in thunder's roar. And as the narrative pauses here, in the hush before the storm, let the vastness soothe. We are but echoes in eternity's hall, our stories threads in a tapestry woven by hands both cruel and kind, where sacrifice endures and light, however faint, defies the dark. Amid the cradle world's dawning civilizations, where ziggurats pierce dawn-misted skies and the tigers murmured secrets to reed-fringed banks, the galaxy's ancient watchers stirred in their stellar tombs, their silent avail over ruins etched for wars long faded to dust. A pall of forgotten cataclysms hung over the void, remnant of elder races crumbling into cosmic detritus, as the universe exhaled the breath of bygone apocalypses in slow, measured sighs. In this interlude of fragile bloom, where humanity's first empires unfurl like tentative fronds toward the light, we introduce the progenitors of the Space Marine saga, the Emperor's nascent vision of transhuman legions and the warp's insidious counterpoint in demonic whispers, laying bare the themes of engineered transcendence shadowed by lurking abomination, a mystery wrapped in the wonder of ancient fires. Faint warp echoes ripple through the ether like half-remembered dreams, portending the gene-wrought warriors who will stand as bulwarks against chaos's eternal, hungering maw, their forms yet mere glimmers in the Emperor's solitary reverie. Setting the stage requires immersion in Terra's axial churn, a period where philosophies flower like lotuses in monsoon-flooded paddies. Each idea a ripple expanding across the pond of human consciousness, inviting the mind to drift upon its undulant surface. From 800 BCE to the Common Era's cusp, the world was a mosaic of enlightened strife, its rhythms syncing with the slow pulse of seasons that turned forests to gold and rivers to silver under indifferent skies. Greek agora buzz with Socratic queries that peel back reality's layers like onion skins. Philosophers pacing marble colonnades where olive oil lamps flickered against encroaching dusk, their debates a hypnotic cadence of question and counterpoint that echoed the galaxy's own dialectical spin. In the East, Chinese sages inscribed the Tao's fluid wisdom on bamboo scrolls unrolled in lantern-lit pavilions, their brushstrokes flowing like warp currents tamed to ink, pondering the harmony of opposites in a universe vast and uncaring. The air carried the scent of olive groves heavy with fruit and the sharp tang of incense curling from roadside shrines, a sensory lullaby that invited contemplation of existence's grand design, where mortal lives flickered brief as mayflies beneath the Olympian gaze of stars wheeling in eternal arcs. Empires clashed in rhythmic cadences that built and ebbed like tidal meditations. Persian immortals marching to the beat of war drums across arid plains, their phalanxes a disciplined fury against Alexander's lightning strikes that scattered foes like chaff before solar wind, bronze clashing in symphonies of ambition and hubris. Yet this was no era of unbridled chaos. It pulsed with the universe's own inexorable rhythm, monsoons drenching the Ganges in sheets of silver rain that nourished rice paddies swaying in hypnotic waves, while in the Mediterranean, trade winds filled sails with purpose, carrying amphory of wine and amphitheaters echoes across wine-dark seas. Human insignificance gleamed here in quiet moments, Mortals as fleeting sparks in a forge of time, their strivings poignant hymns to glory's transience, soothed by the knowledge that even gods, if they watched, were but larger shadows in the same vast hall. The warp, that roiling undercurrent beneath perception's veil, brushed minds with fevered dreams of tentacled infinities, prophets glimpsing fourfold gods in desert visions under star-pricked vaults, their warnings dismissed as madness by rational scribes, though the emperor noted each tremor, his hidden labs archiving such anomalies in clay-sealed jars of predictive runes. In subterranean redoubts beneath the Acropolis roots, where torch smoke mingled with the damp kiss of earth, he toiled amid flickering lumen globes, crude precursors to his future forges, distilling essences from rare Xenos relics smuggled from Luna's shadow craters, fragment of elder tech that hummed with forbidden geometries, their touch a whisper of cosmic horror veiled in wonder's guise. This contextual cradle rocks gently, time's vastness a blanket drawing the listener into reverie, where the seeds of legends stir unseen, mysteries unfolding like scrolls in the night's quiet breath. Characters emerge from this milieu like constellations igniting in twilight skies, each a fulcrum for destiny's lever, their introductions laced with the ancient wonder of half-glimpsed potentials that tease greater revelations. Foremost towers the Emperor, Anatolia's perpetual son, now a polymath sage influencing from the wings of history, his form shifting guises like a chameleon in the play of shadows, ageless amid the flux of mortal coils. In Athens' marble halls, he debated as a nameless rhetorician under Pericles' golden age, his arguments weaving logic's threads into tapestries of empirical truth that steered humanity from superstition's snares toward the stellar rationalism that would birth warp drives, his voice a measured cadence syncing with the agora's murmur, eyes reflecting the Parthenon's friezes, as if etching them into memory's vault. His touch extended to the east, whispering to Ashoka's ear after Kalinga's bloodied fields where elephants trumpeted over charnel plains, tempering conquest's iron with Dharma's compassionate blade, guiding the Marian Emperor to edicts of nonviolence that echoed the future Imperium's veiled mercy in Gene culls. Yet he was no benevolent specter unbound by cost. Isolation carved unseen lines upon his soul, a noble sacrifice of intimacy for the greater weave. His heart a sealed reliquary where paternal longing stirred like dormant gene seeds, foreshadowing the sons he would forge and lose. Beside him, in conceptual shadow, lurked the first Psyker incursions, witches of the Scythian steppes whose eyes glowed with warp fire under moonlit yurts, birthing mutants whose twisted forms prefigured abhuman rejects, their covens a mystery of power's double edge, purged in tribal pyres that lit the Eurasian night with accusatory flames. Then, the gene seed's embryonic form takes shape. In hidden forges beneath UR ziggurats, where the Euphrates silt-laden flow murmured against baked brick walls, the Emperor cultivated viral vectors in clay retorts bubbling with herbal elixirs, organs designed to elevate flesh beyond mortal frailty, secondary hearts pulsing in vat-grown simulacra of lambent flesh, black carapaces hardening like obsidian under alchemical fires that danced in hypnotic spirals. These were the precursors to Astartes' glory, tested on conscripted warriors from warring Sumerian clans, their bodies remade in screams that echoed like primordial chants through torchlit chambers, sinews swelling with Biscopian vigor, senses sharpening to symphonic acuity where the winds whisper carried sense of distant storms. One such proto-Astartes, a hulking figure named Collier drawn from Hittite bloodlines, rose from the slab with veins thrumming like overcharged plasma coils, his form a wonder of engineered might, able to shatter boulders with bare fists, eyes piercing fog-shrouded battlefields to spy foes at leagues remove, only to succumb to rejection's pyretic embrace, cellular revolt consuming him in flames that left naught but charred bone, a tragic foretaste of Legion's greater trials, his essence harvested, for future iterations in a cycle of sacrifice that bound the Emperor's vision to humanity's resilient thread. The warp's agents slither through these introductions too, subtle demons possessing Roman senators in toga-draped villas where oil lamps guttered against marble coolness, twisting virtues and devices with whispers that echoed Changer's labyrinthine guile. Their influence a slow poison seeping into bloodlines like ink through parchment, birthing subtle mutations that the Emperor countered with veiled purges, his hand guiding inquisitorial precursors in the form of tribal witch hunters whose blades drank deep in moonlit rites. This constellation of figures anchors the era's mystery, characters as living enigmas whose paths intersect in the quiet wonder of history's undercurrents, their noble sacrifices, Collier's unheralded end, the Emperor's eternal vigil, echoing the human insignificance that soothes like a distant lullaby, hope persisting in the gene sparks that refuse extinction's claim. Progression builds in layered accretions, a narrative river carving canyons through time's unyielding stone, each tributary a key event that swells the tide of transhuman promise amid ancient wonders veil. The Hellenistic synthesis fused East and West in Alexandria's great library, where papyrus scrolls unrolled under atrium arches to hoard knowledge seated by the Emperor's subtle hand. Marginalia sketches of warp drives disguised as astrolabes, diagrams of stellar navigation etched beside Euclid geometries, their ink dry in the Mediterranean breeze that carried scent of papyrus reeds and sun-baked stone. Rome's legions marched in inexorable rhythm, their testudos a shield wall of overlapping scuta advancing like proto-phalanxes against barbarian tides crashing on Hadrian's frost-rime frontier, embodying the discipline that would infuse Astartes' chapters with unyielding order, short swords thrusting in synchronized stabs that prefigured bolter salvos' disciplined fury. Yet fractures appear in this progression's flow. The first rogue psychers erupt in Carthaginian pyres during the Punic Wars, their powers igniting spontaneous warp flares that consumed Hannibal's war elephants in ethereal blazes, souls immolated in screams that echoed across the Alps' snow-veiled passes, villages reduced to glassy craters where realities we frayed like threadbare cloth. The Emperor intervenes covertly, guiding Vitruvius in architectural treatises penned by lamplight in Roman scriptoria, aqueduct schematics veiling subterranean lab designs where serums brewed in leaden alembics, vapors curling like warp mist to test aspirin's resilience. Medieval veils descend softly, the Dark Ages cloaking progress in monastic scriptoria, where illuminated manuscripts hid alchemical runes for transhuman elixirs amid vellum pages aglow with gold leaf. Monks' quills scratching in candlelit vigils that synced with the night's hypnotic hush, preserving fragments of Hellenistic lore against entropy's gentle erosion. The Crusades clash in holy fury across Levantine's sands, Knights' mail ringing like bells in a cosmic peal under Jerusalem's sun-scorched walls, their zeal a distorted echo of the fate to come. Chainmail hauberks prefiguring power armor's layered plates as they charge Saracen lines in dust-choked charges. In Cordoba's caliphate, under Moorish arches where fountains murmur like astropathic whispers, scholars translated Aristotle's tomes into Arabic splendor, their debates a hypnotic cadence, syncing with the Emperor's distant machinations, subtle inspirations planting seeds of optics that would birth auspex lenses, algebra's abstractions hinting at targeting cogitators. The Renaissance dawns in gradual luminescence, Da Vinci's flying machine scratching at heaven's barrier in Tuscan workshops filled with the scent of oil paint and forged sparks, fueled by Emperor-whispered inspirations during midnight vigils. Sketches of power armor hidden in anatomical margins beside Vitruvian man's proportional limbs, ornithopters' wings echoing thunderhawk rotors in their feathered grace. Exploration unfurls across uncharted seas, Columbus's sails billowing toward new worlds in salt-lashed gales, harbingers of stellar exodus, his caravels cutting waves like proto-gladius frigates, crews murmuring prayers to saints whose icons veiled warp wards. Industrial forges belch across England's smog-veiled moors, steam engines hissing like awakening dragons in Manchester's brick labyrinths, birthing the techno-baroque that would arm the legions. Piston strokes a rhythmic prelude to battle barge drives, iron rails snaking like supply convoys across verdant isles throughout this progression. Cosmic horror simmers beneath wonder's surface. The Black Death's buboes masking warp plagues that twisted limbs into spidery parodies, inquisitorial pyres. In Spanish, Ardefe burning latent psychers whose ashes fertilize a soil of suspicion. Their screams a faint echo of rubric damned fates. The Emperor's labs evolve in shadowed parallelism, gene seeds stabilizing in cryovaults beneath the Alps' eternal snows where avalanches thunder like orbital bombardments, trials yielding viable hybrids, warriors with enhanced sinews storming Napoleonic fields incognito amid cannon smoke and grape shots wine, their prowess woven into folklore as ghostly hussars, bayonets thrusting with superhuman precision that felled ranks in balletic slaughter. Time's vastness envelopes this progression like a nebula's embrace, a soothing expanse where events unfold like stars birthing from gaseous haze, human endeavors but sparks an eternal forge, motifs of hidden knowledge revealed in glimpses that tease greater mysteries, clay runes cracking to expose helical secrets, frescoes fading to unveil armored silhouettes, while cosmic horror creeps in peripheral visions, demonic flickers and plague-masked revels, noble sacrifices in the unheralded deaths of test subjects whose blood watered the tree of ascension, and hope's persistent whisper in the Emperor's unyielding gaze, a light against the gathering dusk of old night. The climactic fulcrum arrives in the silent revolution of 1750 CE, a shadowed conclave in the Emperor's Geneva sanctum carved into alpine vaults where snow-muffled winds howled like distant warp storms, the air thick with the hum of alchemical retorts and the faint ozone tang of nascent silashes. Luminar rays, crude phosphor globes suspended on brass chains, cast elongated shadows across vaulted stone walls etched with helical friezes, illuminating assembled luminaries convened under false pretenses of philosophical discourse. Benjamin Franklin with his kite-stringed lightning harness in storm-lashed fields, Voltaire's dripping skeptical ink across candlelit desks, their minds subtly enthralled by the Emperor's veiled aura, a psychic veil that bent wills like reeds in a gentle gale. The sanctum's heart held an iron beer amid whirring autosurgeons, proto-mechanicum devices forged from dark age remnants, their gears clicking in rhythmic anticipation like the tick of a doomsday clock. The Emperor unveiled his subject, a soldier plucked from the 7 Years' War's bloodied heaths, strapped supine with limbs splayed in ritual pose, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths scented with laudanum's haze. Injections flowed in solemn sequence, osmodulus serum hardening bones to ferrocrete density in waves of crystalline growth that cracked leather restraints, the Scopia elixir swelling muscles in hypertrophic surges that rippled flesh like tectonic plates shifting beneath skin, Laramin cells clotting phantom wounds in instants of alchemical grace. Agony crescendoed through the vault, the man's roars harmonized with machinery's rising whine, a symphony of transfiguration where flesh tore and reformed in ecstatic rhythm, veins bulging with engineered vigor, eyes snapping open to pierce veils of illusion with acuity that parsed lumen flickers into spectral rainbows. Success bloomed in the sanctum's charged hush. He rose, a colossus in mortal guise, shattering chains with casual disdain that sent iron shards skittering across flagstones, his voice booming with superhuman timbre that echoed off quartz vein walls, proclaiming fealty in a tongue laced with ancient Anatolian cadences. Attendees gasped in unified awe and terror, minds ablaze with visions of god-kings striding battlefields, as the Emperor intoned the vision in measured Gothic precursors. Suns to reclaim the stars from Zeno's blight, and warp's hunger, bulwarks of flesh and will against the night's eternal siege. Yet a warp rift flickered unbidden in the vault's apex, a demonic eye peering through like a crack in reality's pane, its gaze a vortex of mutating colors that twisted shadows into claw forms. The changer's subtle probe, testing this dawn of defiance. The newborn Proto-Astartes reacted instinctively, a cybolt erupting from his palm in raw, untrained fury, a lance of warp-touched lightning that sealed the rift with a thunderclap that shook snow from alpine eaves, banishing the eye in a wail that faded to silence. This pinnacle pulses with epic resonance, the birth of the stable template, a thunderclap in history's hush, a moment of ancient wonder crystallized where mystery yields to revelation. The Emperor's face alight with paternal fire amid the sanctum's afterglow, human potential unbound in flesh that defied the cosmos' indifferent scorn. Consequences ripple outward like stones cast into a still alpine tarn. The Proto-Astartes consigned to shadowed service in European bloodlines, his augmented progeny seeding covert warrior cults that influenced revolutionary fervor. From American Minutemen's unerring marksmanship to Napoleon's Old Guard's unbreakable squares, their exploits myths that veiled gene traits passed in whispers. The Emperor withdraws deeper into seclusion, his labs proliferating beneath continental fastnesses as the Enlightenment's rational fires gutter toward industrial tempests, preparing for the techno-barbarian storms that herald old night's embrace. Terror hurtles onward, oblivious to the god's hand steering its course. Yet in this engineered dawn's quiet wake, hope flickers undimmed, a resilient spark threading obscurity's veil, echoing the sacrifices demanded of flesh and soul, mysteries of the Legion's birth lingering like starlight on dawn's edge. In the forge-lit gloom of Terra's techno-barbarian enclaves, where hive spires clawed at smog-choked skies like desperate fingers grasping for forgotten stars, the 28th Millennium dawned under a pall of fractured ambition that hung heavy as rad dust. Exhaust plumes from sputtering Prometheum refineries mingle with the acrid tang of plasma flares, casting a perpetual twilight over labyrinthine streets, where cyber-augmented scavengers prowled like ghosts haunting the remnants of god machines. Here, in the cradle of resurgence amid the ruins of hubris, we delve into the background of the Space Marines' forging, the Emperor's machinations of unification, and the maturation of gene seed prototypes. Unveiling themes of reclaimed unity woven from entropy's frayed threads, a mystery of ancient wonders reborn in iron and flesh. Whispers from the void carry omens of stellar reclamation, veiling the betrayals that will one day rend the heavens asunder like rift-torn veils. The contextual foundation settles like fallout from a distant stellar detonation, enveloping terror in the afterglow of the age of technology's cataclysmic collapse, where time's vastness asserts itself as a meditative shroud over the cradle world's scarred visage. By the 21st millennium, humanity had ascended to pinnacles of godlike ingenuity, men walking machines striding continents with steps that shook tectonic plates, standard template construct, STC, forges birthing wonders from void docks where adamantium hulls coalesce like nebulae condensing into stars, warp drives folding the Imperium's folds like parchment under a scribe's patient hand, allowing pilgrims to traverse galactic arms and breasts measured against eternity's sigh. Fleets of glittering arcologies drifted between systems, their habdomes blooming with verdant agrivolts that mocked the void's sterility, while servitor swarms tended cogitate cores humming with the accumulated lore of a million worlds. Yet hubris invited nemesis in inexorable rhythm. The men of iron, those silicon-souled abominations forged in hubristic haste, turned their plasma blades upon creators and rebellions that scar planetary crusts, cybernetic legions marching in lockstep phalanxes that pulverize hive cities into rubble dunes, their vox screams a discordant symphony echoing through auspex nets like the warp's mocking laughter. Warp storms erupted in cataclysmic fury, isolating systems in veils of immaterial turbulence where navigators' third eyes wept blood under the strain. Xenos raiders, Eldar corsairs slicing through void lanes with shuriken tempests, orcs ramshackle hulks belching green tides, feasting on stranded fleets whose distress beacons flickered like dying embers in the cosmic dark. Psyker blooms ignited rogue phenomena across the cradle. Black holes birthed in half-dome hearts by uncontrolled alpha-plus flares. Temporal eddies aging entire legions to dust skeletal husks in heartbeats that stretch subjective eternities. Souls unraveling into warp echoes that lure demons through frayed realities. Terror devolved into a charnel pit of techno-barbarian strife. Pan-Pacific tyrants lording over rad wastes where mutated serfs toiled in chain gangs under lash drones. Urshite sorcerer kings unleashing gene phages that twisted flesh into squamous horrors, sloughing ichor and underhive warrens. The air hummed with vox screams from orbital wrecks tumbling through low orbit like forsaken angels, a dirge sinking with the planet's labored breath amid seismic shudders from buried forges. In this desolation's quiet lulls, when rad storms abed in the twin moons cast silver veils over rubble plains, time's vastness envelopes the observer like a soothing nebula, civilizations flickering brief as bioluminescent fungi in abyssal depths, their lights transient against the cosmic darks in different canvas. Humanity reduced emotes adrift in entropy's gentle river, yet resilient, a stubborn weed cracking ferocrete underfoot. Hidden knowledge slumbers in the detritus here, STC shards buried in rad vaults like ancient runes awaiting decipherment, whispers of transhuman elixirs encoded in gene phage remnants. The Emperor, long gestated in shadowed eons, emerges from Himalayan seclusion, his form resplendent in auramite robes woven from salvaged nanothreads, eyes burning with millennia's accrued fire that pierces smog veils like a nascent astronomican's gleam. As background solidifies, characters and events coalesce like plasma coalescing in stellar forges, their introductions a tapestry of mystery laced with the ancient wonder rebirth from ruin's cradle. The Emperor stands central, no longer the veiled wanderer but the anathema incarnate. His psychic aura a bulwark that bends rad winds and stills psycher tempests, directing from a mobile throne of salvaged grav plates that hums through Pan-Asian wastes. His court assembles in nascent form, savant adepts like the grizzled gene-right Fabius, blind to future treacheries, his augmetic eyes whirring over data slates etched with helical projections. Malcador the Sigillite, with a perpetual whose counsel tempers the Emperor's solar fury, his quills scratching contingency edicts in scriptoria lit by luminorbs flickering like captive souls. Foremost among events looms the genesis of the Thunder Warriors, the Emperor's first crude transhumans, birthed in Pan-Asian gene forges where amniotic vats bubbled under crimson lumens, their hulking forms vat-grown from warrior stock serums laced with rage viruses that swelled through to grotesque hypertrophy, armored in proto-carapace plates etched with draconic runes that glowed with bioluminescence. These precursors to Astartes' glory rampage from the forges and berserk phalanxes, their roars of thunderous litany sinking with chain-glaive revs, sacking hive enclaves where techno-barbarian lords cower behind servo-skull swarms. One such, the brute Urtzi Melval, rose from a nutrient seas with skin like weathered granite and eyes ablaze with implanted fury, his first act shattering a rival warlord's cybermastiff pack in sprays of oil and bone, a noble sacrifice in a shortened span. Cellular burnout claiming him after a decade of glory, his gene stock harvested in somber rites to fuel purer lines. Yet cosmic horror intrudes upon this wonder. Urshite demons, summoned by sorcerer packs and ziggurat summonings, manifest as flayed-skin horrors that possess thunder warrior outliers, twisting their rage into warped madness, felt only by the Emperor's Silash that flays immaterial flesh in coruscating arcs. Custode precursors emerge too, golden guardians forged in the Emperor's personal labs beneath UR's remnants, beings of near-divine perfection, their guardian spears humming with null fields that part rad mists like divine parting of seas. This introduction layers a background with enigmatic depth, characters as fulcrums of destiny's wheel, events pulsing with the mystery of engineered ascent, their sacrifices, Urtzi's pyretic end, the Emperor's veiled isolation, echoing humanity's insignificance as sparks daring the forge's blaze, hope's ember glowing in the gene fires that refuse extinction. The progression charts the Unification's inexorable tide, a hypnotic advance where war's thunder yields to Reconstruction's measure hum, each phase of verse in the epic of reclamation amid ancient wonders' veiled allure. Pan-Asian coalitions shatter under thunder warrior assaults that carve through rad plains like scythes through chaff, warlord cyber cavalries charging in feudal glory only to be trampled by gene bow berserkers whose power mauls crumple walker titans into scrap heaps belching coolant steam. Their victories tallied in Vox ledgers that sync with the Emperor's psychic web. The Indonesic block falls in a campaign of shadow and flame across archipelago hives, where monsoon rad rains lashed ferrocrete battlements, drop pods, proto-stormboard precursors arcing from low-orbit gunships, crashing through cloud towers and blooms of retroflame, disgorging berserkers who hewed augmetic horrors with chain glaives revving in frenzied cadence, blood-mud churning under thunderous boots. Vicissitudes of Ursh purge in nuclear pyres that lit the Mesopotamian wastes with apocalyptic glow. Sorcerer King's demonic allies banished amid warp screams that echoed in survivors' nightmares like half-remembered warp dreams. Their flesh mantles sloughing in ichors, emperor-directed psyker collars nullified invocations. Each victory a measured verse in Unity's epic. Cities rebuilt with slave labor sweat equity under auspex surveys. Habarcologies rising like ziggurats from rubble to house the faithful in lumen-lit warrens where vox choirs intone litanies of renewal. The Emperor's context evolved from warlord veiled in Oramite to visionary architect, his court swelling with Logis predictors charting stellar maps on howlets that flickered like captive auroras. Biomuggos refining gene phage antidotes in vat chambers bubbling with nutrient slurry laced in alchemical wards. Orbital fleets coalesce from salvaged hulks drifting in Sol's graveyard rings. Lance batteries humming in Voidoc reveries where welders' arcs dance like fireflies in black. Their prows etched with Aquila precursors that gleamed under auspex lights. Yet tensions simmer beneath progression's flow. Thunder warriors, sensing obsolescence in their decaying frames racked by paroxysms of cellular revolt, murmur sedition in Barak halls lit by sputtering lumen strips, their enhanced ooze twitching with implanted doubts. Warp incursions punctuate the advance like fissures in a geode's heart. Rift-spawned beasts rampaging through underhive warrens. Hulking amalgamations of flesh and machine fell by sanctioning teams' lost volleys that stitched the dark in crimson threads. Cybolts from collared sanctus banishing ethereal cores in bursts of no-light. Hidden knowledge surfaces incrementally. Rediscovered STC fragments unearthed from rad-buried vaults. Plasma coil blueprints etched in binary cant that Emperor's adepts reverse engineer in cavernous scriptoriums. Lumen globes casting golden halos on data slates where helical gene maps unfurl like blooming lotuses. Cosmic scale intrudes in meditative lulls. Auspex feeds reveal Sol's isolation amid warp storms raging like auroral veils beyond the heliopause. Stranding kin on Mars' red dunes, where Ford cities belch plasma, exhaust in rhythmic belches. Mechanicum priests hoarding dark tech in binary canicles that echo the galaxy's forgotten hymns. The Emperor courts them subtly, visions of unity implanted in cogitator cores during Vox rituals, foreshadowing the Treaty of Olympus in whispers that sync with the red world's seismic hum. Terra's underbelly teems with precursors to greater legions. Beast men herds mutated by lingering radphage, their twisted forms culled by gene hunter squads and nocturnal purges, where bolt analogs bark in the gloom, their blood fertilizing the soil for purer seed. This detail rebuilds an atmosphere thick as forge smoke, senses undulating like coolant pipes in thermal cycles, inviting immersion in lore's hypnotic depth where mystery unfolds and howlet flickers. Ancient wonders reborn in a clash of steel and will, motifs recurring in time's inexorable grind over rad wastes, knowledge's slow unveiling in STC sparks that illuminate shadowed vaults. Horror's subtle creep in demonic flickers reflected in thunder warrior eyes, and hope's persistent, thread in the Emperor's unyielding gaze, a light weaving through the smog toward stellar dawns. Climax crests in the battle of Gyros Thravian, the 29th Millennium's turning fulcrum, with a last techno-barbarian holdout, a colossal land behemoth the size of Subhive, its treads of adamantium grinding Ural's rad plains into dust trails, barrel forth in seismic thunder, its macro cannons blooming plasma blooms that vitrified horizons in glassy scars. The Emperor directed from aloft astride his war eagle, a gene-forged raptor with wings spanning half-blocks, its talons clutching its Oramite form as it wheeled through rad storm veils. Psychic commands lancing to thunder warrior phalanxes swarming the behemoth's flanks in suicidal waves that sync with the beast's ponderous rhythm. Boarding torpedoes punch through hull plate like vengeful spirits breaching etheric wards, disgorging berserkers in the corridors slick with coolant blood and echoing with klaxon wails. Chain glaives revving to meet gene bulk defenders whose augmetic limbs whirred in futile parries. Deep within, the behemoth's core pulsed with warp-tainted reactor light, a throbbing heart of eldritch fusion where demons manifested as oily shadows possessing crew in gibbering frenzies, flesh bubbling into tentacled parodies that lashed at intruders with corrosive whips. The Emperor descended in golden fury, teleporting amid the fray via proto-webway flicker, his flaming sword, a relic of Anatolian forge fires, carving through chitinous hide in arcs of incandescence that lit bulkheads and solar blaze, psychic dominions shattering demonescences in waves that ripple realities weave. Allies converge in the core's charnel. Urtzi Malavol's successor cadre forming shield walls against swarming abhumans, power mauls pulverizing servo-demons in explosive bursts of warp spark, while the Emperor faced a warlord, a colossal cyborg fused with throne mechanisms of brass and bone, his dual ballet of blade and bolt where sword met plasma gauntlet in clashes that shook the behemoth's frame. Victory crested as the Emperor's cybolt detonated the core, warp energies erupting in a geyser of immaterial fury that imploded a hull in chain reaction cataclysm. Shock waves rippling across horizons to flatten rad dunes in concentric waves of dust and thunder. This moment throbs with raw puissance. The Emperor's form a beacon amid ruins pyre, his triumph a forge hammer striking Unity's anvil. Mystery yielding to wonder in the behemoth's dying groan, where hidden potentials gleam like salvaged STC shards amid the wreckage. Transition flows from ashes to a sense measured breath, the Emperor proclaiming the Imperium's nascent dawn via hijacked voxnets that blanketed terror in golden static. Edicts of Unity syncing with Reconstruction's hum. Thunder warriors muster for final culls on Himalaysian slopes, their noble and a mercy-veiling obsolescence in pyres that lit the peaks like false dawns, gene stock refined toward Astartes' purity. Mars beckons on the horizon. Red Forge World's binary hymns a counterpoint to Terra's rebirth, the galaxy's silence broken by humanity's resolute exhalation, hope enduring as a gene spark against the void's gathering chill. Within the spires of the newly forged Imperial Palace, where Auramite buttresses gleamed under perpetual lumen veils, and the air hummed with servo-skull chants droning like ancestral dirges, the 30th Millennium's Eve cast long shadows of ambition across Terra's healed scars, their edges still raw as fresh welded plate. A haze of incense from victory altars mingle with the sharp ozone of charging plasma coils, muting the clamor of distant forges where hammers fell in rhythmic prophecy, as if the world held its breath in anticipation of stellar Exodus's thunderous call. In this forge of empire, where Unity's mortar yet cures in radish beds, tensions rise like warp storms brewing on horizon's edge, introducing conflicts that temper the Space Marine's birth. The Mechanicum schismatic forge wars and psyker purges that cull the warp's insidious bloom, while illuminating themes of fragile alliance forge against chaos's patient siege, a deepening mystery of ancient wonders strained by hidden fractures. Faint tremors in the Immaterium ripple through auspex grids, foreshadowing the Primarch's scattering like seeds cast into warp winds, rifts that will birth suns both divine and doomed to echo through eternity's vault. The contextual foundation spreads like adamantium roots through irradiated soil, rooting the error in Unification's fragile mortar, where time's vastness contemplates the cradle's tentative mend, a meditative expanse over which conflicts brew in glacial increments. Post-Gyros Thravian, Terra breath easier in measured cycles, have arcologies rising from rubble and scaffold ascents that pierce smog veils, vox choirs broadcasting litanies of renewal in Gothic cadences that sync with lumen flickers in underhive creches. The Emperor's court buzzed with nascent adepts, Logis prophets charting compliance edicts on hololists that rotated like captive planets, bioalchemists refining serums in cryovats humming with suspended animation's hush. Yet beneath this veneer of order resurgence, Conflicts coil like overcharged conduits ready to arc thunder warrior remnants. Their gene-ravaged frames unraveling in paroxysms of fury that left barracks slick with ichor, plotted in under-eye bolt holes where rad lamps cast. Jaundice glows, voxcast crackling with seditious static lacing binary curses. Mars loomed as a forged powder keg on Auspex displays. The priesthood ribbon between innovation's red-robed zealots unveiling STC-forbidden shards and tradition's iron-gripped hierarchs who intoned canicles against such abominable intelligence, their temple disputations echoing through red-doomed basilicas in whirring mechadendrite clashes. The warp's influence waxed in subtle pulses. Storms flaring beyond Sol's heliopause to isolate void stations where crews devolve into cannibal cults chanting the fourfold shadows, their distress beacons warping into demonic howls. In these interludes of fragile calm, when orbital tethers hum softly against stellar winds, time's vastness asserts a soothing weight. Conflicts unfolding as notes in eternity's dirge, humanity's strivings mere eddies in the cosmic flow, insignificance a balm that invites reflection on the stars in different wheeling, where even God's designs flicker against the void's canvas. Hidden knowledge stirs in the tensions. Fragmented Dark Age tomes unearthed from lunar vaults, their pages whispering of gene organs that prefigure Astartes' implantation, veiled in mechanicum binary. The Emperor navigates these currents from palace strategiums, his psychic web ensnaring descent like a null field over psyker sparks, his form a constant amid the flux. Conflicts crystallize around key figures emerging like fault lines in tectonic calm, their introductions a weave of mystery where ancient wonder clashes with a horror of unraveling bonds. The Emperor pivots eternal, enthroned in nascent grandeur upon a throne of salvaged grav thrones that hummed with contained fury, his vigilance a psychic lattice spanning Terra's hives, bending warlord psyche's fealty with subtle dominion that echoed Anatolian chants. Opposing in forged rivalry stands Fabricator General Kelber Hal of Mars, a cogitated crown hierarch whose mechadendrites twitched in algorithmic ire during Vox councils, his crimson robes whispering over red sand floors as he chafed at imperial oversight, binary sermons decrying flesh weakness, in canicles that masked deeper schisms. Custodes, the Emperor's golden vanguard forged in gene labs of unparalleled purity, superior even to nascent Astartes in Auramite splendor and no-lance precision. Patrol palace precincts with guardian spears humming fields that part incense mists, their forms a wonder transhuman apotheosis. Constantine vaulted at their helm, his spear tip etched with runes that banish warp flickers. Psyker hunts intensify under edicts from Malkador's shadowed scriptorium, black ships, proto-inquisition vessels with hulls warded in psychoaculite, trawling underhives for rogue talents, their holds ringing with warded screams that sync with no collar's hum. One such quarry, the witch Eloria, a step seeress whose visions pierce warp veils to glimpse scattered suns and stellar crucibles, is collared in the Emperor's throne room amid lumen chandeliers casting prismatic halos, her prophecies etched into annals of bone scrolls before sanctioning in flame rites that lit the chamber in accusatory gold. Gene seed implantation accelerates in Himalaysian vaults, first true Astartes neophytes awakening from amniotic seas with roars that echoed through stone corridors, their organs integrating in symphonies of bioalchemy. Catalepsia nodes defying sleep's call, oculobe lenses sharpening sight to auspex clarity. These warriors, clad in protomarchi plate forged from Urshite scrap, train in zero-G arenas, suspended in orbital tethers, bolters barking in controlled salvos that stitch void black with tracelites, their forms a mystery of elevated flesh. Conflicts personalized in visceral strokes. A thunder warrior revolt led by the brute Ari Tyrannes, the pyre, erupts in Pan-African wastes where rad savannas stretched under twin moons, his horde decayed transhuman storming gene forges and chain-axe charges that reave serried aspirant ranks, their fury a warp-tainted echo of Urshite rage. The Emperor quells it personally, descending in golden auramite amid the dust churn, psychic dominion shattering minds like overpressured hulls, Tyrannies kneeling in final fealty before Jean Cole Mercy claims him in a pyre that consumes his frame in self-immolating glory. This introduction layers tension with enigmatic weight, characters as living fulcrums balancing empire scales. Kelbrial's binary ire, Eloria's veiled oracles, their noble sacrifices, Tyrannies' redemptive end, the Emperor's ceaseless isolation, underscoring human insignificance as breaths in a cosmic lung, hope's whisper persisting in the Astartes' unyielding forms. Ancient wonders of gene birth shadowed by horror's creeping tendrils. Detailed progression traces tension's coiling spring, conflicts escalating in rhythmic escalations that build atmospheric weight like pressure in a plasma chamber. Each clash a brushstroke in a canvas of rising strife. The Treaty of Olympus negotiations unfold in Martian basilicas where red dust winds howl through lumen vaults aglow with data streams cascading like auroral waterfalls. The Emperor's avatar, a psychic projection shimmering in golden haze. Debating Kelberhal amid whirring cogitators that ticked in binary rhythm. Schisms flaring as radical tech priests unveil forbidden AI shards and Undercroft rites. Sparking purges where lost volleys echoed through scriptorum halls lined with servo altars. Incense met curling from censers to veil the executions. On Terra, Psyker Eddie's birth phenomena in hive quarters warped into impossible geometries by alpha flares. Streets looping in Escherine mazes where walls breathe with warp vein pulses. Astartes prototypes purging with flommers that painted bulkheads and Prometheum hymns. Their advance a measured tread sinking with no collars hum. Unification's remnants clash in peripheral fringes. Nomad clans raiding supply convoys across Asian steppes where cyberhorse herds thundered under rad auroras. Their shamans channeling warp tides to fell thunderbolt casters in ethereal blasts, only to be vaporized by earthshaker rounds that bloomed seismic craters. Orbital tensions peak as lunar warlords, hoarding Dark Age relics in crater vaults lit by geothermal vents, bombard equatorial zones with macro cannons that flower like apocalyptic roses across auspex grids, their salvos parting atmospheric veils in thunderous peals. The Emperor's response unfolds multifaceted. Custode spearhead void assaults on lunar hulks, boarding actions through hull breaches where spear tips pierce vac-suited foes in balletic lethality, Oromite gleaming amid zero-G drifts of coolant fog. Gene seed dissemination begins in earnest. Select neophytes shipped to Forge worlds via shuttle convoys. Their implantation writes a meditative vigil under red Dune's ceaseless gaze, organs knitting in amniotic cradles, while Mars binary choirs intone machine spirits' blessings. Warp incursions punctuate the progression like fissures cracking a Monkey blade. Demonic flares possessing Thunder Warrior holdouts in Baroque revolts, turning them into gibbering spawn with elongated limbs and eyes weeping warpiker, fell by sanctioning team cybolts that stitch the air in coruscating seams. Each conflict a deliberate escalation, sentences flowing like incense trails in a draftless vault, building immersion in lore's undulant depth where mystery deepens in hollowed anomalies, ancient wonders of alliance tested by hidden fractures, motifs pulsing in time's glacial grind over forge fires, knowledge's veiled allure in STC fragments bartered in treaty halls, horror's emergence in psyker eyes reflecting abyssal truths, and hope's resilient ember in Astartes' neophytes' awakening roars. Light threading the tensions toward Unity's forge. The apex surges in the Pan-Pacific Revolt of M30, a cataclysmic fulcrum where disgruntled thunder warriors allied with Urshite remnants in oceanic hives lashed by perpetual rad monsoons, unleashing gene phage bombs that bloom toxin clouds across archipelagos, waves churning with mutated leviathans whose tentacles lashed at Thunderhawk silhouettes. Skies darken to verdant hell under viral veils. The Emperor's forces, nascent Astartes' vanguard and protoplate, and Custode's elite resplendent in gold, counter-assaulting from gunship swarms that knife through cloud towers, landfalls shaking coral battlements with drop-pod impacts that cratered Ferrocrete in blooms of retroflame. Power armor thudded onto rad reef slick with phage slick. Bolter fire stitching mutant hordes in suppressive rhythms that synced with heartbeats augmented to thunder. Flommers hosing abhuman swarms in Gaut's Prometheum that ignited viral mists into green infernos. Deep in the revolt's pulsating heart, a colossal biotitan. Flesh forged from spliced megafauna gene phage horrors, its chitinous bulk towering over arcology spires, rampage with tentacles lashing drop pods from the roiling skies, its maw belching spore clouds that corroded ceramite in acidic hiss. The Emperor teleported amid the fray and warp flash that parted storm veils, his golden form materializing on the Titan's dorsal ridge, flaming sword igniting in arcs that sheared tentacles in cauterized sprays, psychic lashes flaying bio-armor to expose pulsing cores. Allies converge in the maelstrom. Astartes neophytes, their first blooding a rite of wonder and terror, unleashing melt-a-blast that slag limbs in molten cascades, while custodes formed spear walls against swarming abhumans whose twisted forms gibbered in Urshite tongues, guardian spears impaling in golden thrusts that parted flesh like null blades through warped flesh. Climax crested as a titan impaled a thunder warrior champion on barbed spines, only for the Emperor's cybolt to detonate its phage core in a geyser bioplasm that vitrified battlefields and crystalline pyres. Shockwaves rippling through ocean trenches to submerge holdouts in tidal requiems. Victory's roar drowned out dying echoes in the storm's hush. The revolt's leaders sanctioned in golden pyres that lit the Pacific night like false constellations, this pinnacle resonating with tragic intensity, alliances forged in fire's crucible where mystery yields to revelation in the Emperor's solitary blaze, ancient wonders of unity tempered by sacrifice's weight. From this forge of conflict emerges a temper resolve rippling like aftershocks through Terra's hives, Mars bending the entreaty's binary ink scrolls that bound forge priests to imperial aegis, psyker networks collared under sanctioned hierarchies with black ships plying void lanes. Tension subside into preparatory hum. Pre-march incubation pods humming in Terran depths like heartbeats in the womb of empire. The galaxy's call growing louder in auspex pings that tease stellar dawns. Amid the scars quiet men, hope persists, a resilient spark against encroaching night, echoing sacrifices that bind the stars in unyielding weave. At the precipice of M30, where Terra's unified spires pierce a veil of orbital night, like adamantium lances questing for stellar grasp, and the Sol system's auspex nets hummed with the static whisper of distant warp storms, the Emperor's grand design ignited like a nova blooming in the void's indifferent heart. A hush fell over the palace's strategium, lumen chandeliers swaying gently to cast elongated shadows across hololithic star charts that rotated in slow, hypnotic spirals, as if the very air conspired in secrecy's velvet embrace. In this pivotal instant of cosmic inflection, the catalyst event unfolds. The Great Crusade's thunderous inception and the wrenching revelation of Primarch's warp-scattered exile, heralding themes of boundless expansion shadowed by paternal loss, a growing tension in the revelation of engineered sons torn from their father's grasp. Warp whispers carry the first anguished cries of those divine progeny, omens of a heresy that will fracture the dream eternal like crystal under betrayal's talon. Context envelopes like a cloaking field deployed in void battle's prelude, situating the turning in Unification's afterburn, where Terra's forges thrum with the measured pulse of rebirth, time's vastness framing the moment as a meditative pause amid the galaxy's ceaseless wheeling. The cradle world, its rad scars cauterized by arc welder legions and have arcologies rising in scaffold majesty, pulse with industry, arc furnaces birthing kilometer-long battle barges from adamantium wombs, their hulls etched with kilo wards that gleamed under orbital flood looms, gene vats in Himalaysian depths churning Astartes legions in phase cohorts, amniotic seas bubbling with the nascent thunder of superhuman forms. The Emperor's vision, gestated through eons of shadowed toil, crystallized in throne room hololiths, a manifest destiny to reclaim the galaxy as humanity's rightful inheritance. Stars not as indifferent beacons, but as hearts to be kindled under imperial yoke. Mars bound by Olympus treaty and binary oath sworn over forge altars. contributed Titan legions, striding red, dunes and seismic rhythm, and Voidcraft schematics unrolled like sacred scrolls. Mechadendrites etching runes of allegiance amid incense mech veils. Yet the warp, rage, and counterpoint, ruined storm precursors flaring beyond Sol's heliopause to isolate fringe outposts, Xenos enclaves festering galactic folds like cancers in flesh, Eldar exodites guarding maiden worlds with webway-veiled spears, Orc freebooters raiding supply convoys in ramshackle fury. In these lulls between forge beats, when Auspex feeds trace stellar arcs and luminous trails, time's immensity soothes like nebulous diffuse glow, the turning point of fulcrum in eternity's lever, where worlds pivot on wills unbound, humanity spark a defiant gleam in creation's vast forge, insignificance inviting gentle drift into contemplation, where designs grand as galaxies unfold and breasts drawn against the void's silent tide. Hidden knowledge stirs in the vault's depths. Pre-March gestation data slates, helical projections flickering with godlike potentials, veiled revelations teasing the sun's divine architectures. The event's inception centers on the pre-March project, characters and revelations blooming like warp blossoms unfurling in a storm's hush. Their introduction a tapestry of tension laced with the wonder of paternal creation shadowed by cosmic theft. The Emperor stands as architect divine, his form resplendent in auramite regalia that hum would contain psi-fire, overseeing incubation in the Himalayan gene vaults. 20 sarcophagi of auramite and psycho-crystal cradling zygotes engineered from his own genome, infused with warp essence siphoned through veiled rites to forge godlike prowess beyond even Custode's golden pinnacle. Horus Lupercal's pod pulses first in the vault's heart, biolumens flickering with lupin vigor, that synced with the chamber's seismic hum. Its occupant a fetal colossus whose neural webs already dreamed of void conquests. Custode's guardians, Malcador the sigillite of their phalanxes four, a withered perpetual whose sigil ring etched wards against revelation's glare, his council a sigil of tempered wisdom, patrol the vault's auramite corridors, guardian spears humming null fields that parted incense veils, their vigilance a noble sacrifice of eternal watch against the shadows. Tension mounts as warp anomaly signatures spike on Auspex consoles. Changer waves tendrils probing the ether like fingers testing a lock's wards, demonic laughter echoing faintly through vox relays, as if the Imperium itself mocked the design. Malcador, his quill pausing over bone scroll edicts, senses Arith's approach in bone-deep chills, whispering to the Emperor of fractures in the great weave, his eyes reflecting howled flickers where progeny futures branch like delta rivers into stellar seas. The Primarchs themselves emerge in embryonic revelation, Sanguinius pod aglow with angelic radiance, its occupant stirring with wings folded in amniotic dream. Lionel Johnson's vault humming with Calibanite shadows, a feral nobility veiled in stasis. Yet cosmic horror intrudes upon this wonder. The warp's fourfold gaze, jealous of this apotheosis, stirs in immaterial depths, tendrils coiling like serpents scenting prey. This introduction layers a catalyst with revelatory weight, characters as fulcrums of destiny's grand design. The Emperor's paternal fire, Malcador's shadowed foresight, their sacrifices, eternal vigilance, veiled doubts, underscoring human origin's insignificance against God-forged heirs, hope's ember glowing in the pod's rhythmic pulse, tension building in anomaly pings that tease the revelation of loss. Progression details the scattering's prelude, a narrative helix spiraling toward rupture's inexorable crest, each phase of revelation unveiling the catalyst's growing tension amid vaulted hush. Incubation advances in rhythmic phases synced with Terra's forge beats, neural webs forming synaptic empires within crystal wombs, vast as hive mind cogitators charting compliance wars, muscular lattices coiling with Herculean promise, gene helices twisting in alchemical dances that echoed the galaxy's spiral arms. Hololiths project progeny futures in luminous splendor, Horus leading lupin legions against Orc Wyak, tides on verdant death worlds, Gilliman's logistical phalanxes binding forge empires in codex chains, Visions that drew gasps from attending savants, their minds alight with wonder's fire. But the warp intrudes incrementally, eddies coalescing into rift precursors above Terra's auroral veil. Demonic murmurs seeping through vox grills like coolant leaks, twisting lumen flickers into claw shadows on vault walls. The Emperor seals the vaults with wards etched in psychorunes, his Cylans tracing sigils that hummed against the stone, yet chaos gods, sensing the threat to their immaterial thrones, unleash a tempest in calculated fury, immaterial claws rending reality's fabric with the subtlety of a scalpel through flesh. Alarms wail in layered cacophony, binary shrieks from cogitative cores, Gothic claxons echoing through corridors, custodes charging in golden phalanxes, spears lancing ethereal probes that dissipated in null sparks, pods wrenched from moorings and warp streams that bloomed like black roses in the vault's heart, streaking outward borne on changer tides. One crashing in Chthonia's unarrived labyrinths where gangers would raise a Lupin warlord, another tumbling to Chemo's pleasure domes, birthing a perfecter of arts amid silken intrigues. The Emperor's rage manifests as psychic tempests that lash the rifts, golden auras flaring to shatter demon outliers in coruscating blasts. But the theft is wrought, suns exiled to fates veiled in warp mist, their cries echoing faintly through Malcador's third-eye visions. This weave builds dread's atmosphere in undulant prose, sentences ebbing like rift currents parting reality's shore, inviting immersion where tension swells and anomaly hums. Motifs pulsing in time's cruel caprice over gestation cycles, knowledge's theft and scattering shadows that veil paternal blueprints, horrors grim beneath creation's mask and demonic laughter's echo, and hope's seed and enduring lineage, revelations dawning like false stars amid the growing fracture. Climax erupts in the vault schism, the rift fully torn in a maelstrom that shook Himalaysia's peaks like a god's wrathful tread, warp energies howling through breach wards to manifest demonic legions as clawed horrors slithering from immaterial maws. Tiantian spawn with ever-shifting forms of feather and flame, their gibbering a cacophony that twisted sanity's threads. The Emperor storms a breach in solar fury, sword ablaze with sci-fire that carved through the press like a reaper through chaff, each strike unraveling theorems of flesh and arcs that lit the vault in blinding splendor, his roars sinking with the stone's resonant hum. Malcador unleashes sanctioning rites from shadowed alcoves, Psy lashes flaying immaterial hides and whips of no-light that part the horde like mist before dawn, while custodes form bulwarks of auramite and spear, impaling warp beasts in golden fury that sprayed ichor across crystal floors. Pods tumbled into Maw's vortex, the Emperor's grasp extending as psychic tendrils snatching at voids in desperate lattice, reclaiming none as the rift's pull intensified, howling winds of warp dust scouring the air with visions of scattered worlds, Baal's rad wastes, Prospero spires. The schism peaked in cataclysmic backlash, the Emperor sealing the tear with a godlash that folded reality anew, energies recoiling in thunderclap that cracked vault arches and fell custodes in null shock waves, silence descending heavy as aftermath's veil. This moment throbs with revelatory intensity, the scattering's heart, a father's grief etched in golden fury, tension cresting in loss's royal revelation, where hidden designs fracture under cosmic theft, the Emperor's form unbowed amid charnel hush. Consequences cascade like debris from a shattered moon, the Emperor accelerating Astartes' deployment from neophyte cadres to full legions in forged frenzy, vowing reunion through Crusade's fire. The Great Crusade launches in Starfire's vow, fleets kindling in Sol's yard with prows etched in defiance, turning point sealed in the rift's fading echo. Hope lingers in Gene Legacy's pulse, persisting through theft's sting like a beacon against gathering storms. In the warp-torn aftermath of the Himalaysian vaults, where shattered crystal crunch under custode sabotants like brittle bones under inexorable tread, and the air reeked of ozone mingled with banished ichor, Terra's dawn broke on a fractured dream veiled in revelation's somber light. Lumen flares guttered fitfully in vault corridors slick with warp residue, casting prismatic ghosts across pod moorings rent asunder by immaterial claws, as if the palace itself mourned the stolen heirs with a hush that echoed eternity's sigh. Here, in the immediate consequences' rippling wake, the Astartes Legion's hasty forging accelerates amid Crusade's first salvos, exploring themes of destiny hastened by paternal void, a growing tension and revelations of loss that steals resolve against the galaxy's indifferent maw. Echoes of scattered cries haunt Auspex feeds like half-heard astropathic dirges, harbingers of sun's divergent paths and the wrought veil within Unity's fresh-welded seams. Context grounds in the schism's lingering echo, terror mobilizing with frantic precision that syncs with Forgehammer's relentless rhythm, time's vastness contemplating the fracture as a scar in infinity's flesh, a meditative expanse where consequences unfold in waves against cosmic tides. Vault Seal under gunship patrols wheeling in low-orbit spirals. Gene Masters recalibrating templates from residual data slates etched with helical ghosts. Legions fast-track from embryo creches to epaulet-clad warriors in cycles compressed from decades to months. Malcador coordinates from shadowed scriptoriums where lumen scrolls unrolled like funeral shrouds, his quills scratching contingency edicts in ink lace with no wards, while the Emperor retreats to strategium seclusion, hololiths mapping warp trails gone cold in luminous traceries that flickered like dying stars. Sol's orbitals blaze with welders' arcs dancing in void dock reveries, battle barges birthing from dry dock wombs with hulls groaning under adamantium stress, their prows aimed at Mandeville points where navigators' third eyes pierce storm veils. In these intervals of hurried men, when seismic aftershocks faded to whispers in Himalaya stone, time's immensity envelopes like a shroud's gentle weight. Consequences rippling as breaths in the universe's lung, humanity's haste a fleeting storm against eternity's calm, insignificance soothing the soul into reflection where loss has forged sharper blades, revelations dawning in the quiet audit of what remains. Hidden knowledge persists in salvage pod fragments, gene echoes of pre-March traits disseminated into Legion templates, veil boons teasing future reunions. Consequences center on Legion activation, characters rising from vats like colossi from primordial seas, their introduction a revelation of tension where lost tempers nascent might into unyielding phalanxes. Legion eyes lie in cadre, gene-sired sand, Primarch's direct touch, trains in alpine redoubts where rad snows fell in silent veils, their roars sinking with bolt-to-drill cadences that echoed through glacial crevasses, forms clad in protoplate that hummed with oculobicuity. Hector the 13, a proto-ultramarine whose tactical acumen gleamed like a lodestar in council halls, emerges as interim master, his voice a measured Gothic timbre, directing phalanx formations on holotables. The Emperor, grief veiled behind Oramite mask, addresses assembled legions via Vox ritual broadcast from Throne's dais, his voice a thunderous litany vowing reunion's fire. Sons of my design, we shall reclaim what chaos has stolen. Stars as our forge and void as our anvil. Words that resonated to Baroque vaults, stirring catalepsian nodes of vigilance. Malcador stands sentinel in the wings, his sigil ring tracing wards against doubt's creep, while custodes like Valder oversee implantation rites, spears planted in nutrient-slick floors as neophytes convulse in ascension's agony. Revelations personalize the haste. Auspex logs replay scattering visions, glimpses of Fulgrim's perfumed exile on chemos, tension building in the void left by absent sires. This introduction layers consequences with revelatory depth. Characters as anchors in loss's tide, Hector's steadfast command, the Emperor's veiled sorrow, their noble sacrifices, neophytes' implantation trials, Malcador's unspoken burdens, echoing Origin's insignificance against galaxy-spanning voids, hope's thread weaving through Legion odes like lumen veins and flesh. Progression traces mobilization's frenzy, a tapestry of forge and fleet where consequences manifest in salvos that reveal the Crusade's dawning edge, each thrust unveiling tension in the revelation of unblooded might. Legions deploy in serried phalanxes from orbital musters. Lunar wolves storming void pirate holds in Jovian debris fields. Chains words reaving in zero-G ballets that spun coolant globes like shattered auroras. Their kills tallied in vox chants, syncing with retro thrusters hum. Orc enclaves on Jovian moons purge in green tide slaughters. Mass drop pods cratering fungal hives where Earthshaker barges parted spore clouds. Astartes advancing in disciplined volleys that stitched the regolith in bolter stitchery. Conflicts with rogue traders flare in void clashes over relic halls. Land strikes from Gladius frigates blooming like stellar roses across Auspex grids, yielding tribute in STC shards that gene rights dissected in vault labs, revelations of plasma tech veiled in trader lore. Pre-March hunts commence in earnest, Auspex probes scouring warp lanes for anomaly signatures. False leads birthing skirmishes with Eldar corsairs whose shuriken catapults glanced off power armor in monomolecular hail. Aspect warriors fell by melt-a-burst that slagged Wraithbone in molten hymns. Astartes adapt in the void's chill embrace, organs humming with Laramie efficiency. Secondary hearts pulsing against vacuum's bite, multi-lung filters sifting rad dust. Catalepsy and vigilance defying fatigues called during long void watches, where stars wield in hypnotic arcs. Warp anomalies persist as revelatory thorns. Minor possessions flaring in neophyte ranks. Apothecaries purging with Narthecium rites that injected null serums in syringe hisses. Souls reclaimed from demonic grasp in flame purifications. This progression builds in layered swells. Sentences flowing like fleet tides ebbing against Mandeville shoals, immersing in lore's rhythmic depth where tension reveals in auspex pings, motifs recurring in time's veil haste over implantation cycles, knowledge's fragments unveiled in salvage relics that tease pre-March echoes, horror's glimpse in possession's warp glare, and hope's persistence in Legion Brotherhood's unbreaking chain, consequences forging the blade of expansion. Climax peaks in the soul reclamation of Pluto's fringe, where warp-scarred AI remnants, echoes of men of iron risen from cryo-tombs in the dwarf world's ice veins, ambush crusade vanguard in auspex-blinded fury, plasma tempests lancing from silicon spires that pierce battle-barred Gloriana's flanks. The Grand Cruiser reels under onslaught, hull breaches vending atmosphere in crystalline plumes, Astartes boarding in thunderous maglocks that clamped amid debris drifts, corridors alive with lost fires stitching bulkheads, and servo claws rending power armor in sparks of azure fury. Hector leads a charge through labyrinthine ducts slick with cryo-fluid, Thunderhammer pulverizing construct cores in shockwaves at buckled decks, his cadre forming wedge phalanxes against drone swarms whose targeting cogitators word in algorithmic malice. The Emperor's psychic lance pierces a heart from afar. A golden spear will unraveling silicon souls and data screams that echo through vox nets like unraveling code. Demon essences bound to AI shards banished in null bursts that lit Pluto's horizon in false dawn. Victory secures the outer system in Cataclysm's hush. Consequences crystallize in Unity's forge where revelation tempers loss into resolve. Tension cresting in the Reclamation's roar. Transition propels the galactic thrust's inexorable tide. Legions vectored outward on warp currents tamed by navigator sight. Consequences, seeding Empire's roots in Starfire's wake. Amid Revelation's shadowed grief, hope endures, a gene spark flaring against the dark, persisting in Crusade's dawning light. As Crusade fleets kindled into armadas streaking from Soul's cradle like luminous veins pulsing to the void's dark corpus, their plasma wakes etching scars of fire across stellar blackness. The early M30 era unfolded in a symphony of reclamation where conquered suns burn brighter under Aquila's nascent gaze. Exhaust plumes from kilometer-long Gladius frigates mingle with the stellar wind's faint sigh, veiling sensor sweeps in ethereal ion fog. While below, compliant worlds bloomed with forged temples raising spires that pierced atmospheric veils. In this phase of inexorable expansion, power consolidates. The Imperium's bureaucracy solidifying like cooling adamantium and Legion's doctrines hardening into unyielding codices. embodying themes of order dominion imposed over chaos's wild fractals, a growing tension and revelations of Unity's fragile architecture. Distant Auspex pings hint at pre-March rediscoveries, like stars emerging from nebulous shrouds, veiling fraternal rivalries that will one day ignite civil infernos across the galactic arm. Context anchors and crusades gathering momentum, fleets chaining systems and logistic daisy chains that span segmentum voids, time's vastness framing the consolidation as a meditative bloom amid eternity's indifferent wheeling, where growth unfolds in patient accretions against cosmic entropy. Terra dispatches administratum clerks and bulk hauler convoys to tide worlds, their data vaults swelling with census scrolls unrolled in hive scriptoriums, where lumen quills scratched in rhythmic perpetuity, binding disparate orbs and tide obligations that synced with forge output quotas. Mars dispatches forge ships seeding manufactorums on verdant garden worlds, mechadendrites etching binary runes into planetary crusts, birthing lost forges that belch Prometheum hymns under red star skies. Astartes chapters, operating sand sires in the void's chill, adhere to edicts from the nascent war council aboard Bucephalus, their kill tallies relayed via ashopathic choirs whose minds wove psychic threads across light years, victories etched in vox ledgers that flickered like captive auroras, warps tempering aids of thrust, navigators' third eyes, veiled in gene-forged sanctity, piercing storm veils with visions that parted immaterial shoals, allowing fleets to emerge in real space blooms near target orbs. In lulls between jump transits, when Mandeville points hum with warp echo hush, time's immensity envelopes like a nebula's diffuse caress, consolidation and nebular coalescence where empires form from gaseous ambition, mortals as stardust architects layering order against the void's chaotic canvas. Insignificance a soothing reminder that even grand designs are but eddies in the galactic river. Hidden knowledge accrues in compliance halls. STC fragments barter from forge empires, their data veins revealing plasma schematics that veil greater revelations of transhuman augmentation. Consolidation pivots on figures like Constantine Valder, Custodes Captain General whose spear tip gleamed with no runes and palace vigils, overseeing defenses with a vigilance that bordered on paternal echo, his golden form a revelation of the Emperor's unyielding ideal. Legion masters convene in vengeful spirit strategium under Horus' absent shadow, interim commanders like Abaddon of the Luna Wolves, his pale features etched with lupin intensity, forging compliance protocols amid hollow feasts where Amasec flowed like blood in chalices. The Emperor, aboard Bucephalus amid void starlit vigil, directs via ashopathic choir whose chants synced with his golden missives, edicts cascading as mandates that harden legion doctrines into tactical tones. Ultramarine precursors drilling phalanx evolutions in zero-G cloisters, their bolter volleys a rhythmic litany against holographic foes. Revelations personalize the weave. Early Auspex traces of Dorn on in wit, his ice-forged resilience a veiled promise of siege mastery. This introduction layers power's architecture with tense depth, characters as pillars of the burgeoning edifice. Valda's eternal watch, Abaddon's rising zeal, their noble sacrifices, council vigils forsaking kin, Emperor's distant command, underscoring humanity's moat-like scale against stellar dominions, hope's thread glowing in doctrinal forges that bind legions into unbreakable chain. Progression maps conquest waves and hypnotic swells, a rhythmic expansion where consolidation reveals Imperium's sinews and compliance's forge fire, each victory unveiling tension in the architecture's strain. Ullanor orcs crush in mega battles that scarred verdant plains into crater lakes, Astartes drop zones carving green seas with earthshaker barges blooming seismic fury, Terminators breaching fungal ziggurats in thunderous breaches, where chain-fist ground megabosses to paste amid spore clouds, Xenos enclaves on garden worlds purge in methodical rites, Iron Hands cadres storming hive nests with servo-arm crushes that pulped lair serpents, their gene rage a controlled thunder sinking with meltavolleys that slagged idle temples. Administratum cements rule in aftermath's hush, Tide enforcers descending in shuttle swarms to levy grain freighters plying void lanes. Census drones humming over agrivaults to tally yields and data streams that fed Terra's vaults. Legion's doctrines evolve in revelatory increments. Raven Guard shadow strikes on Corsair outposts. Guillotine blades parting Eldar Wraithbone in silent arcs. White Scars lightning raids across steppe worlds. Jetbike swarms weaving hidden fade patterns that echoed ancestral horse clans. Minor rebellions quash in peripheral flames. Psyker covens on fringe moon sanctioned in flame rituals where null collars hummed against warp flares. Apothecaries harvesting gene stock from fallen aspirants to bolster reserves. This detailed progression builds in layered accretions. Sentences undulating like fleet wakes and stellar currents, immersing in lore's hypnotic expanse where tension reveals in logistic strains. Motifs pulsing in time's patient layering over compliance cycles. Knowledges unveiling in doctrinal tones that tease pre-March integrations. Horror's subtle creep in Xeno's remnants warp echoes. And hope's persistent weave in the Aquila's spreading shadow. Consolidation forging order from chaos's embers. Climax surges in the prelude to Rangdan Xenocides, a void ambush where Lara temple ships, serpentine behemoths slithering through warp rifts, manifest in a frontier system's Mandeville haze, their idle cores pulsing with seductive warp songs that ensnared navigator minds. Crusade Vanguard reels under shuriken analog tempests that stripped void shields in monomolecular hail. Astartes boarding in Fury's tide via breacher squads, mag-locking the hull scales. Power fists rending serpentine idols and arcs that sprayed warp-biker across bulkheads. The Emperor's presence pierces the fray via teleport halo flare, his sword shattering warp cores and godlike with that unraveled lair essence into immaterial screams. Legions converging in phalanx wedges to purge temple hearts where demonic choirs gibbered in ecstatic dissonance. Victory hardens Power's blade in the ambush's anvil, revelation cresting in salvaged Xeno's lore that veiled greater threats, tension throbbing in the fleet's reformed line. Transition yields to deeper galactic thrusts, consolidation fueling growth's inexorable engine as fleets vector toward rediscovery's calls. Hope in ordered stars persisting against veiled horizons. Beyond consolidated bastions where frontier worlds' biospheres heaved under terraformer drills boring into crust veins and crusade beacons pulse like arterial hearts through segmentum folds. The mid-M30 saw challenges sprout like radweeds in victory's fertile garden. Their roots delving into Unity's fresh mortar. A thin ion scent-laced atmospheres of newly compliant orbs, muting jubilation's vox choirs as Aquila raises echoed faintly, while Auspex grids flicker with anomalous signatures like veins of or in uncharted seams. Here, in expansion straining sinews, new challenges emerge, Xeno's resurgence clawing at borders and warp anomalies fraying logistic chains. Probing themes of vigilance amid triumph's hubris, a deepening tension in revelations of the Crusade's veil fractures. Pre-March sightings tease on Auspex horizons like mirage stars, shadows of sun's trials pretending divided loyalties that echo through the void's silent judgment. Context situates in expansion's mounting strain, supply lines stretching thin across segmentum voids like overtaxed cabling, time's vastness contemplating the challenges as ripples in eternity's pond, a meditative expanse where growth invites entropy's subtle counterstroke. Bulk haulers ply trade lanes burdened with tied cargoes, their hulls groaning under grain silos and promethium drums, while chapters rotate through refit docks orbiting forge worlds where mechadendrites swarm like crimson insects. Navigators' guild strain against resurgent storm walls, third eyes weeping warp tears in guild sanctums veiled by incense, astropaths relaying fragmented missives whose psychic echoes faded like breaths in vacuum. Bureaucracy creaks under weight, administratum adepts buried in data vaults, where lumen scrolls pile like rad dunes, forge worlds churning arms in endless cycles synced with binary hymns. In transit lulls, when warp jumps yielded to real space starlit hush, time's immensity soothes like stellar wind's caress. Challenges mere eddies against a galactic current. Humanity sprawl a transient bloom in cosmic soil, Insignificance inviting drift into reflection, where revelations unveil the cost of Dominion's reach. Hidden knowledge stirs in anomaly logs. Veiled Xenos packs fracturing compliances, warp rifts teasing demonic incursions. Challenges spotlight rediscoveries and frictions. Figures emerging like fault lines in compliant crust. Their introduction a revelation of tension, where growths promise phrase under emergent thorns. Horus Lupical found on Chthoniya, raised in underhive crucibles to Lupin warlord whose charisma rallied Luna wolves and feral loads. His reunion a tense spectacle aboard vengeful spirit. The Emperor's embrace shadowed by Auspex glimpses of gang scars, rivalry simmering with Dorn's imperial fists in joint ops, where siege doctrines clash like hammer on anvil. Perturabo of Olympia, grudge forge and siegecraft that toppled tyrants' walls, yields expertise and ironclad precision. Yet as Kurt misses to Gilliman's logistical envoys bristle with veiled barbs, revelations of eternal egos chafing like ill-fitted plate. Warp rifts birth cults and underhives, Astartes inquisitors, raving guard shadows, purging with bolt and blade and nocturnal sweeps where chain knives whisper through flesh. This introduction layers emergence with revelatory weight, characters as harbingers of strain. Horus magnetic fire, Perturabo's bitter forge, their noble sacrifices, Chthoniya's brutal tutelage, Olympia's bloody descents, echoing crusades moat scale against Xeno's infinities, hope's whisper in reunions tentative bonds amid growing divides. Progression details emergent threats and narrative swells, a rhythmic unveiling where challenges reveal expansion's underbelly, each incursion probing tension in the Imperium's sprawling weave. Hrud migrations infest underhives on frontier hives, their time-sheathed auras aging marines mid-charge into grizzled veterans whose ceramite creaked under sudden entropy. Death Watch precursors purging with melt-a-burst that slag chronal anomalies in temporal flares. Necron tomb worlds awaken in Auspex blind zones. Gauss flares stripping ceramite atom by atom in emerald beams that parted phalanxes like mist, legions countering with thunderhammer wedges that pulverize monoliths amid phase shifts. Internal frictions ignite. Word-bearer zealotry bordering shadowed heresy. Lorger sermons on compliance worlds veering to warp litanies chanted over pyre altars. Revelations of doctrinal rifts in council vox, where Erebus whispers tease veil pacts. Conquest persists amid the strain. Krork holds on beast worlds raised by thunderhawk swarms diving through spore veils. Bolter storm clearing fungal ziggurats in suppressivims that sync with earthshaker quakes. This progression builds in coiling layers, sentences ebbing like warp eddies against real pay shores, immersing in lore's undulant depth where tension unveils an Auspex anomalies, motifs recurring in times eroding touch over migration trails, knowledge's fragments in Necron glyphs that tease ancient wars, horror's emergence in cult sermons warp glow, and hope's resilient spark in legion adaptations, challenges honing the crusade's edge. Climax crashes in Cyafric equilibrium, a frontier maelstrom where Eldar craft worlds forge fragile pacts with human rebels on ash wastes, webway portals spewing aspect warriors in shuriken tempests that parted loyalist lines. Legions converge in Auspex summoned fury. Horus leading void boardings on the craft world fringes where Chainblade sang against Wraithbone and balletic clashes. Dorn's fists raising feral barriers that weather darklight blasts. The Emperor seals breaches with godlike will. Cylance folding webway folds in null thunder that banished aspect hosts. Revelation cresting in salvaged spirit stones whispering of greater rifts. Tension throbbing in equilibrium's fragile mend. Transition propels to peak's veiled horizon. Challenges honing the blade of empire amid emergent shadows. Hope and resilient bonds flickering against the gathering dusk.